my presentation, 10 warning signs in IT projects, with the, not subtitle, I don't know, sorry about that little thing, but the other line, lessons learned from my journey through Mordor. Last year I gave that exact same presentation in New Zealand, and yes, I did hike all the way to the top of Mordor. It's quite an interesting place. It's actually the most, one of the most active volcanoes on Earth, by the way. So anyhow, so before I start my presentation, raise your hand if you work on a project more than 50 hours per week. Did it count? Okay. Don't be shy. Raise your hand if you've worked on a project more than 80 hours per week to make it happen on time. Okay, I guess, I don't know, but me, I did actually cancel my vacation and holidays to make a project work on time. If that's the case, for some of you that are shy, don't worry, you're not alone. According to these statistics, we have 70% of IT projects that fail in a way or another. We have 66% of projects that go over budget. 33% of projects go over schedule. And 17% under-deliver value. This is crazy stuff, and it needs to stop now. My name is Yann Larrivée. I'm an independent consultant for FULAB. I specialize in project rescue, and I also organize the Confu conference. And I've been hosting the PHP Quebec user group since 2003. My Twitter handle is here, and my email is here, so you can send me, comments, messages. Comments is always great. It enables us to improve. So, my presentation objectives are very simple. I want you to be able to identify project threats early. I want to reduce the number of project failures. Reduce the stress, the anxiety, and headaches caused by those projects. And most importantly, I want you to spend more time with your family and your friends, because this is the most important thing that you have in your life. I will spend some time describing some of these words here, because according to some discussion I've been having in the past few years with developers and even managers, we barely understand what these words are. They're very basic. Objective. An objective is what we're trying to accomplish as a business. It has nothing to do with features, methodologies, frameworks, or whatever means that we will get to the finish line. For example, a friend of mine has a startup. His objective is to build a software to enable his users to discover music. That's his business objective. That's what he's trying to accomplish as a business. Metrics, it's a system that enables you to measure your progress. How far are you from reaching your objectives? In the case of optimizing the software, you could say, well, we are going to optimize this software by 50%, by 60%. In the case of sales, your metric could be, we're going to increase the number of subscriptions by, say, I don't know, let's give a number, 2,000 subscriptions per month or something like that. Success? It's when you reach that objectives. And failure? Well, according to those statistics, I don't really need to explain it. It appears that we're actually very good at it. Okay, so objectives. Some of the warning signs is stakeholder in very large projects. Sometimes you're going to have multiple stakeholders that will be in charge of a project. For example, there could be a stakeholder for the mobile app, one stakeholder for the web app, and there could be some other side projects that are interconnected to, and there's going to be another stakeholder that will be represented. Sometimes it's hard to get all those stakeholders to agree on objectives for one simple reason, because it's their role to lead. It's their role to impose their vision to a team. So it's hard to have them collaborate sometimes. goals are not communicated. Goals are not often us as developers. We don't even know what are the goals of the project. Same thing goes for the front-end developers, the designers, and sometimes even marketing people don't know. Or goals are not understood properly, or simply just poorly defined. So some of the solutions that I found, is to define these business objectives is ask yourself, why are we doing this? What are we trying to improve? Those are two very basic things. But once you start asking yourself these questions, you will get closer to understand or express those business objectives. So regarding the stakeholders, what you want is you want to have all the stakeholders in one room and define those business objectives. Get them to write them on a piece of paper and agree to them, sign that contract. That contract is the most important thing to the success of your project. It's the key to the success of your project. You want to have a kickoff meeting that will explain those goals, that will explain those metrics as well. And in that meeting, everybody that is a key player to the success of this project should be in that meeting, because it's super important that everyone commits to those goals. So that goes, yes?
I have a question for you on the contract. How effective is it actually? I mean, in my experience with dealing with stakeholders, even if they've agreed to something via email, they say, well, I can do what I want anyways. And so
an email is not a contract, according to me.
Right. But I'm curious, how effective is the contract actually, and then also, how did they take it when you asked them to sign a contract?
Well, obviously, signing a contract. If you're a developer and you go to your stakeholder and say, "Hey, please sign that," it might not be well seen. Obviously, it has to go with the culture, but someone has to bring it up. But if you start bringing up the idea, maybe we should commit to some goals. Maybe we should, bring up the idea. At some point, it will go up. Go up to your team leader, explain the idea. I don't know what's your role in the business. Usually, these things are done by upper management. But it's super important. A contract doesn't have to be ultra complex. It's just a piece of paper with a couple bullet points. Each bullet point shouldn't be more than 2 lines, 3 lines maximum. It's nothing complex. But the fact that you're actually writing them down and signing, according to me, it's a psychological step. And then you're committing. Once you sign, you're committing to doing that. You're committing to do this. So another great thing is. So yeah, we have that kickoff meeting where we have all the developers, the integrators, the designers, even marketing people in that meeting to explain and understand those goals. Print those goals on a piece of paper. Put it beside your screen if needed. So you're reminded every time that you make a decision, you remember why you're doing this. It will help you to always ask yourself that question. How does it bring us closer to the objective? This is probably the most important thing that I want you to remember, is that specific question. How does it bring us closer to the objectives? If it doesn't bring you any closer to the objective, maybe you should be doing what you're doing. So communicate all those goals to your team members. Super important. Deadlines. The deadline is too tight. For some reason, sometimes we accept projects. We know they're going to take 3 months, but we are given a deadline that is about 1.5 months. You don't have the time to do it, but we accept it anyways for some very weird reason. So what happens is we start working overtime and we burn ourselves out. The deadline is too far. This may not seem like a big threat, but it's actually probably the biggest one. For one simple reason is when the deadline is too far, you're not in a hurry to do things. Nothing is urgent. I have a great story for this actually. It happens to me often. when I go to a bar with my girlfriend, and we go to this place and it's empty. We sit down. 1 minute, 2 minutes comes by, no service, 5 minutes. Other people come by, sit, they get their drink. I'm a very patient person. And at some point, I just walk out after 10 minutes of waiting. And the reason why I didn't get any service is because initially, there was not enough work for the waiter to actually notice that we were actually in the bar. He was busy doing something else or just, looking at his phone or whatever, chilling. But when the bar starts filling up, then there's enough work there's enough people to actually start paying attention in the bar and start serving. And this happens a lot in tech projects because, like I said, our focus is on doing things on a slow pace. But then at this point, we're actually burning down time, and we're burning down on budget as well. So we're we're actually driving the project towards failure. So it's actually a big warning sign when the deadline is too far or we're too at ease. So some solutions. When the deadline is too tight, well, what you want to do is negotiate that deadline. And maybe you want to negotiate in the case that the deadline is not flexible. You want to negotiate the deliverables based on objectives. I worked on a project for elections. Unfortunately, elections don't change dates or cannot be postponed. You go vote on that day, and it ends at 10 o'clock at night or whatever time. So you have no room, you have no margin. It has to work no matter what. So what you do in that case, you remove features. Not everything is critical. Not every feature is critical to the success of a project. There are things that can be removed. So you prioritize based on objectives. If it doesn't bring you close enough to the objective, you remove it. Get more skilled developers. A skilled developer is going to be faster, is going to produce less bugs, and is going to produce more quality software. Plan time for the unexpected. My partner once worked on a project where the only developer actually was diagnosed with cancer and needed immediate attention. It's a very unfortunate situation, but these things really happen, and we rarely plan for these things. We actually don't. We forget them, but we need to plan for this because it will happen at some point. Progress. You don't have any demos for within the first month of since you started your project, or you're starting to miss demos. So you missed the first demo, the second demo, the third demo. What it actually means is you actually don't have a project. You probably don't have anything, or worse, your customer says, I don't want a demo. This means your customer actually doesn't care about his project. He's probably not paying enough. Some solutions. Have weekly demos. Weekly release, weekly demos. Developers, give your, if you have virtual machines, give the IP of your virtual machines so your manager can go look. I know this may sound scary because we think that managers will just go spy on us. Are we working or we're not? But they have way better things to do. They have bigger problems to solve. But the day that they don't see any progress, they're gonna have the peace of mind that they can go check. They might go check once a month or whatever to see where the project is at. Managers, team leaders, follow Git commits. I know that Git commits is not a true sign of progress. There could be bugs, there could be, but at least you know that there's something going on. There is this project where this person hasn't been committing anything for months. We haven't seen anything happening. And when it was time to release, and we asked them to push his code, well, he wasn't able to do it because he's been slacking off for the past 3 months. It was no code, no nothing. He was fired for a very good reason. So follow those git commits. So unless you want to get in that situation. Yellow flag the tasks if that are not, sorry. If you're 50% through the time associated to the task and you're not done, or you don't think you're going to be possible to do it, yellow flag it. Red flag it if you're 75% through the time for completion of this task. You don't want to wait till you're 100%, because then you don't have any margin of error anymore. It's too late. You're going to go over your deadline and over your budget. Team spirit. I'm sure you've seen all this. Pointing fingers, developers saying, this guy doesn't know how to code, this guy is a noob, he doesn't know what he's doing. Poor collaboration, or just no collaboration. People don't want to talk to you, or people don't want to work with you. Negative attitude. I once worked on a project where the product owner was in a meeting with a couple developers. And within that meeting, he started bashing on other developers that were not in that meeting. This is terrible. This is negative energy that doesn't belong in a project. It will destroy your project, actually. So one of the ways to solve these problems is once you have a negative energy in your project, what you want to do is you want to break that negative conversation. You acknowledge the problem. Yes, okay, this is not working, but now but how can we change this situation? How can we improve? So always change the focus to solutions. Don't focus on problems. Meet the team members that, if it's a team member or a colleague that has a negative attitude, meet him. Explain him that his negative energy is actually affecting the success of the project. It is affecting all the other team players in the team. And this is bad. The worst thing that can happen is you have to remove that person from the team. And removing a person from the team doesn't mean he's fired. He can be moved to another project where he will be more happy. Anyways, when you're at that point, he's probably not producing anything, or at least not producing anything of value. He's probably counterproductive, actually. Get to know your team members. In a company that I worked with, there was this guy that was, I'm a big skier, I enjoy skiing. And there was this guy that he was a big skier as well. So we started going skiing every 2-3 weekends together, and we became good friends over years. When I had something urgent that needed to be done on the servers, I would just fire him up an email, and it would get done in record time. Nobody else could get results like that. Don't underestimate the power of beer. It's amazing what it can do. Communications. No one ever reports the true status or the true problem. A year ago, we had this customer where there were 2 providers for this project. Large international organization, I won't name it. There was a provider for the backend, MongoDB, Node.js, web services and all. Front end was HTML, AngularJS, HTML5, and all that kind of stuff. So the customer contacted us, and that project has been going on for a year, and they hadn't seen any progress for a very, very long time. About 10 months. So they contacted us, and what we started to investigate after a couple of hours in talking with the 2 service providers and gaining access. We discovered that actually there was no backend, there was no MongoDB, there was no Node.js, there was nothing, no web services, no HTML, no JavaScript, just PSDs. So how come a project after 10 months was that far down the line without anything, without anybody actually saying that, hey, we have a problem, or it's not working as we expected, da 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 da. This is insane. People are counting on us to build those projects. We have a responsibility. People provide excuses for roadblocks. Sometimes they're going to blame the framework. Oh, the framework is, we don't have the right framework. Maybe we should use Laravel. Maybe we should use Python. Maybe we should use Ruby. Or maybe we should switch to MongoDB. These are all excuses for not doing what is required. Most of the time, problems are not fixed with technical solutions. People forward you to the documentation. So you go see a colleague, you want to say, hey, like, can you please explain that to me? You have 5 minutes to explain that to me. And they send you to the documentation. Oh, read the doc, it's there, it's complete. That means they don't want to talk to you. This is terrible. Languages. I know this doesn't quite apply to America, but in Canada, we have French and English. I once worked on a project. There were two teams. One in Montreal that spoke French, and another one that was in British Columbia that spoke English. One team was junior, one team was senior, the other team was junior. So whenever it was time to communicate, it was very hard. Not only for the language barrier, but for one team, it was super simple, and the other team, it was super hard. I think I forgot to say one team was junior, the other team was senior, so sorry.
No, you're right.
Okay, so yeah, so for one team it was easy, the other one it was super hard. So it was, the level of communication was very hard to communicate on the same level. And on top of that, we had 3 hours differences in time zone. So just we barely had any time to communicate and solve problems. When people provide excuses in a meeting or blame a framework or whatever, always try to find the root cause. What is actually the real problem? In the case of you have two teams that speak two different languages, have someone that is bilingual. Fly them in the other team's office, get more face time. Readjust your schedule. In that case, we readjusted our schedule by, one team readjusted by 1 hour, the other team by 1 hour. So we had 2 extra hours. Wow, great! 1 hour is not a big deal. Having one-on-one conversation. It's crazy the amount of information that you can get on one-on-one. It's not everyone that will report the true status in a stand-up meeting. In stand-up meetings, a lot of time people will hide, will say, yeah, so it's going great, or it's okay, I have a couple issues, but it's going to be okay, don't worry. So have that one-on-one conversation. You're going to get a lot of detail. Take 5 minutes, it's worth the shot. Don't be shy, pick up the phone. Stop writing emails. You're going to get at least you're going to get real-time feedback. I know we're trying to hide behind our email, but sometimes talking to someone is good. So, focus. A lot of people focus on methodologies, architectures, frameworks, and such. This is great. We build those crazy applications that are going to solve all the problems on Earth. But sometimes it's too complex. We have some people that will not understand what we've done because we've chosen bleeding edge technology that the rest of the team doesn't have the training on. Adding cool feature. This is called scope creep. Basically what it means is we're sitting in front of our computer and we're telling ourselves that, hey, I'm just going to add this, it's going to make the application so much cooler, so much better. This is great, but you're actually not reaching your goal with this. Gold plating. This means that you're sitting in front of your code, and this happens to everybody at some point. You're looking at your code, you're like, oh man, this is so bad. This is terrible. I'm just going to rewrite this. Now it's so much more pretty. This is great. This is called gold plating. And then 1 month later, you're probably going to go back to that code and you're probably going to rewrite it because it's never perfect enough. Focus on the right things. That code was probably working before anyways. Last minute changes. You probably had a stakeholder or boss at some point that came to you and say, hey, can you please do this? It's going to be so much better. I have a good example. I have a good story for that. I worked at a gaming company that I won't name a couple of years ago. And in the gaming industry, you have this terminology, the game is golden. This means it's perfect, it's ready to be pushed to the customers, it's ready. What happened is, they decided to change a couple of scenarios, 1 or 2 weeks, I don't quite remember a timeline, but a couple of weeks before the delivery, and the game was golden. So the guys worked very, very hard, adding the new features, changing the scenarios, and now the game was golden again. Friday comes, the whole team gets fired. Don't ask any questions. Why? I don't know. But the whole team was gone. I walked in Monday morning in the office. The game was the best seller of all time. Great result, but a morale killer forever. Nobody wanted to work there anymore. But last minute changes are usually never good. They may be good for a business, but they're not good for us. Focus. So some solutions. Plan time for R&D outside your project. R&D is actually a form of training when you look at it. It's a great time for learning that new programming language, that new framework, or try that new methodology. Do it outside your project. And that R&D should be done outside your project. And make sure it doesn't, so that way it's not accounted towards that same budget. It should be a different budget. Focus on delivering value, not features. Features are useless if they don't bring value. Always ask yourself, how does it bring us closer to the objective? I said it earlier, I'm going to keep saying this. This is the key to success, or at least to move forward. Documentation. I'm sure if I send you an email to all of you and with 3 paragraphs, and in there I have 1 line that says important and followed by 3 words. And I ask in 5 minutes what was important. I'm sure that the answer I will get is probably nobody will have a clue. For one simple reason, is because now in IT, we're overloaded with emails, Twitter, Facebook, whatever, and lots and lots of documentation. And we even delete emails just by reading the title. We read the title, we just delete it because we have that inbox 0 goal. So nobody's actually going to read your 50-page novel. You have way better things to do. No documentation. That's actually also a good one. In the case of the guy that had cancer, what do you think, with no documentation, that would have been terrible. I actually been assigned at some point a project where there was no documentation. There was no code and source control. The only documentation there was the stakeholder. So I had to ask him questions and I had to dig on the production server. This is insane. Document your stuff. Yes, by the way, the team was gone. So nobody has a 10,000 feet view. So that means nobody in your team has a 10,000 feet view. That means that nobody knows what they're doing. This is insane. You should know what you're doing. At least have a brief idea what you're doing and why. No or poor technical documentation and analysis. These are your blueprints. I know we have a tendency with the Agile now that we should document stuff. It's useless. But I do think it's super critical. So, plan time for analysis. Centralize all your documentation and source control. So that way I can just do a git pull of the project and have all the documentation with it. Because we're all lazy. We don't want to go fetch in Dropbox and email or Google Docs and whatever other place that you're storing your stuff. Or napkins. Right? Readable code. I shouldn't have to use a specific algorithm to decrypt your code. Code should be self-explanatory. Have good tools to write your documentation to your specifications. I personally use Asta for UML and ERD and Balsamic for wireframes. These are two great tools. They work on Linux and Mac and Windows, and they're actually pretty cheap. They cost about $100 each. Everybody can afford that, even if you're an employee and your employer doesn't want to. We have no reasons not to use these tools. Keep your documentation straight to the point. Your documentation shouldn't be more than 3 pages for a specific project, and it should be bullet point. Don't write those big blurbs of text, like nobody's going to read it. We have better things to do. If we want to read a novel, we're going to go on Amazon. Quality. The ghost problem, I'm sure you've seen this. You fix a bug on a project. You send it to QA if you have a QA team. And the QA team tests the things and it comes back. And then you fix it again and it pops up somewhere else. That's a ghost problem. The endless bug list. You have a project and the bugs keep piling. You have an architecture problem. You need to solve that. No time for quality assurance or no time for performance testing. This is insane. You're just going to put this in production and hope for the best. I have bad news for you, but it might just blow up in your face. Have a staging server and a production server ready 1 month before your launch date. So at least you know that you have a production server. Determine the mission critical components. You want your engine to work, right? Unit test. We don't care about the heating mirror. Like, it can go to garbage, but the engine needs to work. Ask yourself, in the case of some project, high-load projects, look at your stats. How many users do you have at your peak hour? Plan for that. Plan for that. 1.25 more if you want. But do your testing, your performance testing, according to your peak hours, because you're going to have those peak hours again. It's not new. Have QA do their job before demo. You don't want to do a demo to your customer with something that you haven't tested. You're going to look stupid. You don't want that. Metrics. We have no way to measure the expected outcome. This is very sad. So, what you should do, you should determine the level of success of business success that you want, that is expected of this project. For example, I have a project where I have 5 scenarios. I have a disaster scenario, a not so bad scenario, an okay scenario, and a very good scenario. So that way I know exactly, as my project moves forward, I know exactly where I'm standing. How close am I to my objectives? This is important. In the case of optimization, well, you could have multiple metrics. You could say, well, okay, well, we're going to try to optimize by 70% or 60%, and you can have multiple levels of metrics. You could determine the level of quality desired by this application. It's not every single bug that deserves your full attention. There are edge cases that can be fixed later. Not every bug needs to be fixed. Determine the level of performance of your application. How many users are going to use it? This is important. I know I had like big customers, like TV channels that had no clue, so they flipped the switch. Other things you should watch for, and things you should leave at home. Leave the office politics at home. These these are killers and pretty much useless. They don't bring any value. Leave your feelings. Feelings prevent you from taking clear decisions. We're rational people. 1 + 1, 2. Leave your ego at home. Your ego won't do any good to the project. We don't need people saying like I'm the best and all those kind of things. We're all good. We're all here to solve the problems. So what I want you to take away from this presentation, before you start a project, what you need to do is write a situation appraisal. That means who are we as a business? What kind of experience we have at solving these problems? What kind of people we have in our team? Do we have a team of junior, senior, intermediate? How is it going to help us accomplish this project? Define your business objectives, metrics, joint accountability. Who's responsible for what? I'm sure you've seen this like, oh, I thought you were supposed to do that. Oh, no, I thought that was you. That happens everywhere. Define a clear chain of command. Who reports to who? It seems a little bit basic, but a lot of time people don't even know. Like I said earlier, third time I'm saying it, always ask yourself when you're doing stuff, when you're coding, ask yourself, how does it bring us closer to the objectives? Break your project into smaller iterations. If you have projects that a project that's going to take a year, break it into smaller projects with smaller deadlines. Focus on the smaller iterations without losing the bigger scope. What you want is you want to finish on that. You want to focus on that finish line and know where you're standing. Don't forget to socialize with your coworker. Socialize with your coworker. Don't underestimate the power of peer. It gets things done. And stay alert. Stay alert for those warning signs. It's not because your project is going well today that it's going to be exactly the same tomorrow. Because a project is failing one day at a time. And because it's failing one day at a time, you don't notice until it's too late. So that's why you need to stay alert. So that's my presentation. You have my email, Twitter, again. So if you have any questions, any questions? Comments? Are you asleep?
A little tired.
Okay. All right. Well, that was my presentation. Thank you.
Is there one or two of these that you find are most common throughout companies, or is it always a mix? Or projects, I guess.
The most common is people not saying their real status. I think that's very common because of ego issues. People are afraid to say like, hey, it's not going well. They're afraid of getting fired or getting critics from their boss or whatever, which is understandable. A big project that failed in the United States is Obamacare. And actually, President Obama was not even aware that it was that bad a couple of weeks before. So, when you think about it this way, everybody down in the line lied to each other. Oh, it's okay, don't worry about it. It's under control. So I think that's the best example I can give you guys. But it happens in small projects as well. Yeah.
How do you motivate developers to document? Do documentation? I don't know.
I think it's important. How do you motivate a developer to document? There are two types of documentation. I think you can do like JavaDoc stuff, which I find useless because it's not updated properly anyways. Or you could, documentation can be simple. I highly believe in UML. That's the most basic thing. So if the code goes to garbage, at least you have a picture of what it's supposed to do. The logic behind it. Unfortunately, most of the time, those documents don't get updated too frequently, so it does require an effort to update them. But I think it has to be part of the cycle, and it has to be part of the review. If the documentation is not there, just don't accept it. And at some point, if people keep not documenting, well, do what you have to do. Yeah.
I have a little question that it's kind of slightly unrelated, but like you used to work in the gaming industry. What was that? What was the transition out of that industry for you like?
I stayed for a couple months after, and the transition out.
Yeah, the transition out. Like I've got a background in games too, and I find that I want more financial stability, less crunch, and so I'm transitioning more to web. Like I have a background in web as well.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this may be a question that maybe I could have you answer individually, but I don't know if anybody else is interested.
Well, I think that the gaming industry taught me a couple things.
Yeah.
That you gotta work. You gotta work. You're there to produce and
work your ass off.
Yeah, work your ass off. That's the best thing it gave me.
Yeah.
But how I transitioned, I got a job somewhere else.
Yeah.
Like,
was it like hard on an emotional level? Did you notice anything that was really like super different? I don't know. I guess.
Not really. I mean, I was using the Big Crush, and after that, I didn't think it was a piece of cake.
Yeah.
So-
Okay. All right.
Any other questions? All right, have fun.